Welcome back. You're watching Business Today here on KTN News, and we are still keeping it with that conversation about Brexit, or Britain wanting to leave the European Union. And we are now joined via phone by George Bodo, who is the head of the financial desk at EcoBank Capital. Thank you so much for joining us, George. Now, of course, Johnson has said that there is a good side and there is a bad side to Brexit in the Kenyan perspective. But from where you sit, how exactly do you think we are going to benefit from Brexit? George, if you can hear me?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, George, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Well, there have been a number of benefits that have been pointed out. You know, we are looking at both the good and the bad of Brexit, or Britain leaving the European Union. But what are some of the benefits that we are looking at coming out of this?
I think we are looking at, I would want to look at it in two ways, to the extent that I've got two concerns. Number one is, on the negative side, is I've got a concern around investment inflows into Kenya and into the region as a whole. And number two, I've got a concern around demand for Kenyan products in the UK and in the larger European Union. I'm not really concerned about renegotiating trade agreements with the UK or the EU. For me, the trade framework is not a concern for me. It's about what this is going to do to demand, and especially that UK is headed for a do-it-yourself recession. That is probably going to happen in the next couple of months. I don't know when. But this is going to dampen demand for our goods, both in the UK and the EU. Remember that this bloc is already having tolerable time trying to post strong growth. The growth quantum coming out of the EU, it's still not where it should be compared to a decade ago. You got this EU, UK leaving EU, trying to destabilize demand. I think those are my two main concerns. On the positive side, obviously I've just tweeted that the British pound is the cheapest level. We've ever seen this over the last 20 years.
That's true.
Does this mean that our supermarkets should now be full with British goods? I think so.
Yeah.
It's now, I think, as you highlighted previously, that the Kenyan shilling pound rate is now at about 130.39 from a high of 147. I think this is good news for any goods being brought from the UK.
Look at this from the tourism perspective. You know, do you think that tourism is going to be affected, knowing that the United Kingdom is one of the top source markets for tourists for Kenya?
It is going to be, it's a dicey question. It's going to be a problem if there are two ways to look at it. Number one is, if indeed the UK goes into recession, then you know what a recession does to disposable income, household liquidity, and therefore families tend to concentrate more on the basic needs, and the holiday will take a backpack in such a scenario. Number two is the pound becoming cheap across board. That does also mean that the pound is getting, the Kenyan shilling is getting expensive for pound holders. Especially the fact that we're headed for 2 years of uncertainty. It's a too long time for people to keep being uncertain.
What kind of preparation does a country like Kenya, what kind of preparation strategy do we need to put in place, for instance, to guard against some of these shocks that might come up in the long term? The preparations that we need to have has been outlined by the central bank, and I agree, it's the only one we need to have. We just need to make sure we have enough reserves, cushion us against any major shock. Because as I said, if indeed demand for Kenyan goods in the UK and in the EU, larger EU, goes down, then that does a lot of negative feedback
into our the economy's FX earning capacity goes down. Remember that EU, including UK, accounts for about 20% of Kenyan exports. It's a huge market for us. The UK alone is about a third of our export into the European Union, so it's a huge market for us. The UK and Holland account for 2/3 of our export in the EU. So any contagion from this crisis spreading in the larger European Union is going to definitely weaken significantly the Kenya's economy, FX earning capacity, and this is going to be going to feed back into the FX market. We're going to have to deal with some volatilities. We've been very, very stable for the past 5 months or so, for the past 8 months, and I think the economy cannot just withstand another volatility.
All right.
So having enough reserves to defend any volatility in the market, this is the only preparation we need to have, in my view.
All right. Well, thank you so much, George Bodo. George Bodo is the head of the financial desk at EcoBank Capital. Well, thank you so much for speaking to us. And speaking of Brexit and what exactly our concerns are as a local economy, let's also now bring in the international perspective. And Trix Ngado now joins us to tell us what exactly the rest of the world is saying about Brexit.
Yeah, it's all about Brexit, and this is being reflected across all headlines, many papers, internationally, locally. It's all about the effects. The Brexit now is being turned to Brexit because there are a lot of people regretting leaving the EU. So first of all, we're going to look at Bloomberg, and the first, I'll read an excerpt from that, and said David Cameron will address Parliament on Monday after a weekend of political turmoil that left Britain looking rudderless. Rudderless is just fancy speak for aimless, following the shock vote to leave the European Union. So there has been a lot of political turmoil. The Labour Party is now staging a revolt, and as you can see, even on Twitter, this is All Africa. It's an African website, and it's looking into what's in it for Africa. So Brexit will have profound consequences for UK's status as a financial centre and gateway to the EU for its trade relationships with the world and for the global influence, writes SAIIA. So this article looks into the possibilities of this trickling down to Africa and what this will do for Africa. Right. And then we have this as this must be Bloomberg, and it says Osborne tries to calm markets after Brexit vote. No, this is the Financial Times. So we had it live in the morning, and he was talking about that there were contingency plans that were set up before, and so this is not supposed to be a doomsday thing. So people should calm down and not freak out because of the market going very low. The pound has been on its lowest in 30 years. But you know, he's the same guy who was saying that this would spell doom for Britain. So it's a bit of an ironical twist to the whole Brexit issue, but he is telling people to calm down. This is not as bad as it is, and they're going to handle it. And if you look at another paper, if we could get another slide, we have here, this is Twitter, and someone is a caricature of all the leaders who are
Boris Johnson.
Exactly, Boris Johnson. I think we have Michael, we have Farage here, and they're not sure it counts as doing something constructive, but drawing this made me feel slightly better because it is displaying the leaders who are for Brexit, who are now going back on what they were saying. They're now saying they did not really mean it's all about immigration, it's all about the economy.
Well, because I guess now they're starting to realize that they could have made a mistake.
And the warnings were true.
If you look at some of the, say, Scotland, there are people in Scotland who voted precisely for the fact that they didn't want immigrants in the United Kingdom. And some of them said, it was, I actually even listened to some of them saying, we do not want Negroes. That's the problem that we're having. So, they actually were voting much on impulse, some of them.
They weren't looking at the bigger picture of the whole Brexit issue. Here is another caricature of the leaders. We have, this must be Boris Johnson. I cannot make out who the rest are. But they say, we didn't actually mean vote leave. We didn't actually mean fewer immigrants. We didn't actually mean more money to the NHS. So they're going back on their word. And this is actually making a lot of Britons wonder, why did these leaders mislead us? And it's seemingly like, it seems like something they did out of impulse, and they were following the advice, I guess, and the talk of these leaders. And you heard David Cameron saying this is something he truly believed in, and from his speeches you could tell that he actually believed that this was not good for England. And also we have David Cameron here, speak of the devil, Cameron to face lawmakers as UK drifts aimlessly. So Cameron is going to Parliament to talk about this whole issue, but as you know, he has already decided he's leaving office. He said that on Friday. In the next 3 months he'll be out. Boris Johnson is already trying to fill his shoes. Here we have Osborne says Brexit contingency plans are in. So he's trying to, like we heard in the morning, he's trying to calm people down, make sure the markets, I think, revive or whatever they're supposed to do. And just make sure that things are not going downhill any further. It's really bad right now. Then we have billionaire Soros, who was long on pound before vote on Brexit. Here he gave a lot of warnings about this, and in 1994 he made a windfall out of predicting the plunge of the pound. So he's someone who knows what he's talking about. But clearly Brits did not listen to.
So I guess, you know, also looking at how it actually turned out, you can see that the 51.9% and the 48.1%, you know, that was quite too close a call. And you can actually see that most of them were actually now regretting
what they voted for. And as you can see, this is a graphic depiction of how the pound fell. If you can scroll down, you'd see that these are the months, and this is the lowest it has been all year. This is when it's high here, it's around 2015 at the beginning and at the beginning of this year, and then it goes really down. And after Osborne gave the reassurance, it came up a little bit, but it's still
by about 2%.
Exactly,
and it dropped
still
further.
drops. So still people are not sure about the pound sterling as of now.
All right. And of course, there's been a lot of questions that are being asked on what it's going to take for the United Kingdom to actually leave, rather for Britain to actually leave the the European Union. And possibly if we're going to have that, and as we wind up as well on this entire Brexit conversation, probably my director, Diana, can be able to put that up for us here so we can take a look at what exactly it's going to take. So, of course, the first step for Britain was for them to go into a referendum to choose whether or not they wanted to leave the EU. And as it turned out, 51.9% said they wanted to leave. And so they have to start the process. Now, it's going to take 2 years before before the United Kingdom can start the negotiations. And then, of course, what we're going to see is that the United Kingdom now has to notify the EU on invoking Article 50 of the Treaty on the European Union that actually did allow them in the first place to get into the EU. And then the remaining 27 EU countries will meet and discuss the withdrawal of the United Kingdom, I guess, from the EU. And then the second step is going to be negotiations between the UK and the EU, and then thereafter they will draft a deal to put the European Council, that is about 27 leaders of these 27 economies, and they will need to approve from at least 20 countries if they like to let Britain leave the EU in this case. And then later on we will see a ratification by the European Union Parliament as well on giving them a go-ahead. But should they not do that, then we'll have to see something else all over again, that they'll have to come back to the drawing board in case these other 27 countries reject the United Kingdom leaving the EU. So it's going to be a whole long process altogether. But hopefully, at the end of the 2 years, if it can be stopped, right now I guess we're getting to that point.
I know.
We're getting to that point where we can say, it needs to be stopped right now. But thank you all for taking part in this conversation. And for Kenya, I guess only time can tell in the long term. And we did ask, do you think Kenya's trade with the EU will remain fluid after Brexit? Do you think Kenya's trade with the European Union countries will remain fluid after Britain exits the European Union? And this is what the results look like. 57% say no, Kenya's trade with the EU will not remain fluid, and 43% are saying yes, it will remain fluid. I wish I could read a few tweets, but my director is telling me I'm out of time. Let me see if I can steal a moment from him to read maybe a tweet or two about what you are saying about Brexit. Well, here we go. We have someone here who is saying, Obar Mark is saying, well, what we're seeing right now is that the pound has already dropped, and Brexit vote was low to a well, the pound was low as a result, but it's not bad for Kenya. But after this cash bloodbath, the ripple effects will hurt Kenya. And Ebla Europe Sahal is saying it depends on whether Kenya had a bilateral agreement with the UK, using it as a gateway for the EU market or a multilateral one. And finally, we have one coming in from Manuela Kepleting, who is saying, no, we expect some repercussions, such as changes in trade agreements, foreign policies, and the impact on our exports. Well, thank you all so much for your views. My name is Joy Doreen Bira.
And I'm Trix Ingado.
Coming up next is News Hour. Do stay with us.